So this week we're talking about shadow work. So what is it exactly? A lot of people have probably heard the term before. There's probably not so many people that really understand what it is. So shadow work is basically the practice of working through and learning to forgive your shadow self. Okay, your shadow self is the side of you that you tend to hide from the outside world. It's the part of you that tends to be a little bit darker, sometimes a little bit more negative. It's the part that you believe is the less desirable part of you, or it's the bad part of you. But most of those shadow traits, they don't make you bad people, or they don't, we're not bad people because we have them. And a lot of times, those traits can actually be positive. But we've just been conditioned to believe that they're less desirable. So, when we're fighting really, really hard to hide certain parts of ourselves, we're not really being our true selves. And that can really make our relationship with other people pretty difficult. Modern shadow work, which is what I'm referring to, that refers to discovering those traits and forgiving ourselves for them. Healing from past trauma that may have caused them, and processing them in order to grow spiritually. And the shadow work outcome, the benefits of it can be extremely liberating, but the process during engagement of shadow work can also bring on some pretty intense emotions. They can bring on a lot of feelings of, anger and resentment, rage, envy, sadness, denial, heartache, frustration. Those are just a few, but it really can bring those to the surface. And the thing is that you want it to. That's kind of the point. You want to bring those parts of you and those feelings up to the surface so that you can really feel them and acknowledge them and then heal from them. If you're not feeling them intensely, you're not going to get the full effect. And you're not going to fully heal from them either. But all of those emotions, they go away. They're temporary. It's normal to feel like that when you're tapping into all of those buried memories. It's part of the healing process, but they do go away once the healing progresses. When I first started doing shadow work, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't want to admit to those parts of me that I had. I didn't like the fact that they existed. I had a lot of denial towards it at first, but I had to make myself do it because I knew that the benefit from healing from those, all of those memories that contributed to those feelings of hatred towards myself and even hatred towards some other people, in other situations, all of those feelings came from a memory somewhere, some kind of experience that I had. And even though I did not like the feeling at the time of engaging in it and, bringing those back to the surface, I knew that the benefit of doing it was worth it. And so I made myself do it. Shadow work is indeed work. It's not fun and games. It is work. It is serious work, and it is really hard work. It's probably one of the emotionally hardest things that I have ever done in my life, was really get involved and dig deep into shadow work. But it's also what has gotten me to where I am now. I didn't even realize it until I was, beginning to heal from my shadow self, from all of those demons that I had carried around for so long. I started realizing during that healing process that I actually was portraying a lot of those feelings that I had that were stemming from that shadow work that needed to be done. All those negative feelings and stuff, I was actually portraying those onto other people, and I didn't even realize I was doing it. And the main ones were actually my husband and my children. They were getting the worst of it. And I had everything from, I had situations from childhood that, when I started thinking about that, made me extremely emotional. And that's kind of a key indicator that that's something you need to heal from, is when you think about it and you get extremely emotional. To where, you're crying, your blood pressure is, raising, your heart's racing, maybe you're breathing heavier. You get all of those physical feelings. And that's when you know that's something that you probably need to work on healing from. And I had those coming from being a very young child. I had things from school. I had past relationships. I had things, mistakes and mess up, things that I had done wrong in life, that just were eating away at me because I hadn't healed from them. I hadn't forgiven myself for them. I hadn't forgiven other people that were involved. And it just ate away at me, I tried to just kind of bury them, ignore them, like they'd go away. But the thing is they don't go away. You might be able to bury the memory, but you can't bury the effects of the memory. And that was, the problem that I was facing, was that I didn't think about the memory anymore. I didn't think about, the trauma that happened, or, the situations that caused those initial feelings. I wasn't thinking about those, but other situations would bring me to feeling the same way. I had a lot of envy towards other people. I had a lot of jealousy in my relationship, which, it was there for the longest time. It's been there the entire time we've been together. But I continued to just shove it down and pretend and ignore those feelings, and then I put on a mask to pretend like I didn't have any jealousy problems, because that was a part of me that I didn't want people to know. I didn't want them to see that I had that. And it, that's came from initially from relationships that I had back in high school. And it came from relationships that I watched other family members, like my parents, or, aunts and uncles, sisters. They were relationships that I viewed on the outside that actually caused me to develop those jealousy feelings based on what I was seeing and what I had experienced. And I, portrayed those jealousy feelings onto my husband unknowingly, even though to me I was putting on a really good fake act and pretending like I didn't have them. I had memories that came up, in my close circle of friends that I had in elementary school. And I love all of them to death. They are still some of my best friends that I've ever had. Even if we don't talk very often, I still think about them all the time. And, a couple of them I do talk to a lot. And, they're some of the greatest people I know. But I had memories that where, certain childhood situations happened that really they're not that big of a deal, but at the time they really felt like they were. And, were things that caused me to feel like I was always like the backup friend. I wasn't the one that people would reach out to and want to hang out with first. I was always the one that was, called to hang out when nobody else could. And that actually wasn't the case, but to me it felt that way. And so that was another trauma that I had to deal with. I had to bring that to the surface and feel like I was a backup friend again, like and then heal from that. In doing that, I realized that, when those situations happened, well, they were doing stuff that I didn't particularly like doing. So the reason why I wasn't, the first one on the list to be invited to do that was because they knew I wasn't going to have fun. I mean, but to me, it hit me a different way, and I felt like I was being left out. And I had to heal from that. And, now I understand the reasoning behind why that happened. And I also understand that it wasn't the fact that they weren't thinking of me, I mean, it sounds silly, but it didn't. It hurt my feelings. And I felt like that all the way through adulthood. I would keep myself closed off from becoming good friends with other people for fear that I would end up being left out. And I've done that forever, I still struggle with that a little bit. I have a hard time, admitting that somebody is actually my true friend as an adult that is more recent, and isn't somebody that I was friends with for, years ago. I still have a hard time with that. That's still difficult for me. But I'm getting a lot better at it. I'm getting better at accepting their friendship with me. So that was another kind of thing that I had to heal from. A lot of my shadow work had to do with mistakes that I had made. Things that I had said or done to myself, or that I had even done to other people and regretted, but didn't want to admit that I'd actually done them. And those were really tough. Those were some pretty tough ones. But I made it through. I forgave those people, even if they aren't around and I can't forgive them to their face. I still forgave them anyway. I forgave myself. I admitted the wrongdoing. I apologized to those people. And some of them I didn't get to apologize to person, because unfortunately I don't know where they are. I don't even know if they're still walking this earth or not. And so I wasn't able to forgive them person to person, but I was able to forgive them from soul to soul. And so, I did it that way. I apologized to people from soul to soul. That was the only way that I could do it, if I didn't know where these people were. So what I also did to help me with shadow work, I went online, I looked up, how to do this and all of this, and I came across a website that was pretty good. And it described, if you're having trouble on figuring out where to start, how to start this shadow work process, to meditate, using an intention of a prompt. Okay. So, I went through, I read all of these prompts that they had, and I picked the ones that kind of resonated with me that I thought I needed. And then in doing that, I took this little black book here, and I created myself my own little shadow work journal thing. The pages are blank. This is not the one that I used. I made duplicates of these, just, if people are interested. But I made these little journals, and what I did is I thought about some of those prompts and I meditated on them. So some of them that I had in there was, what's the most hurtful thing that you've ever done to someone else? And I really had to think about that, like, what is the most hurtful thing that I've ever done to somebody else? Everybody's done something, everybody has done that, but what's the worst? And I had to really dig deep and think about it and bring that up to the surface, What's the most hurtful thing you've done to yourself was another one. What's the biggest lie that you constantly tell yourself, and why? Let's see, some of the other ones that I used. What are your toxic traits? How do these present themselves? How do you project these onto others? What tends to trigger envy for you, and why do you think this is? What's one trait that you see in other people that you wish you had? And why do you not possess this characteristic traits? So those are some of the prompts that I used, and there's a ton out there. And then I came up with some of my own. And, I focused on one prompt at a time. Whatever it was that I wanted to try to work on that day, I focused on that. I meditated. I brought it to the surface. I faced it, forgave myself, and what I did with the journal is, aside from just kind of writing down how, my answers to those prompts, my thoughts that I had, I also drew pictures during meditation of how I felt. So, I had markers next to me and pens and pencils and stuff, and I would just draw whatever came to my mind during that meditation process. And it's interesting to actually look back on it now, and you can tell how much pain there was in some of those drawings by the use of colors that I used, if any, and just how hard I pushed down on that pencil when I was writing. You can tell by looking at what I drew and what I wrote and paying attention to those little details. You can actually see how much pain there was during that particular session. So it's kind of cool, but it's all helped me a lot. It's helped me really heal from a lot of things that I was ignoring, and it's something that we all really should practice doing. The world really would be a much better place. People like to take the easy way out. They want to swallow a pill and cover up the pain. They want to just shove it under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist. And they want people to sympathize for them, which is fine. I'm not saying sympathy is not good. Sympathy is very beneficial. But it's something that, it can't be given in high doses. People do have to take accountability for the problems that they've had in their life and face them and deal with them too. You can be sympathetic to somebody that commits a crime, but you can't be sympathetic to the point that they feel like, oh, everybody understands, so it's okay that I did that. It's all right to be sympathetic and see it from their point of view, but you can't offer too much sympathy. They also need to hold themselves accountable and make themselves better. And that's a problem that a lot of people have, is they don't do that. They don't want to hold themselves accountable, and they don't want to get better, because getting better is a painful and scary process. But it is something that, everybody should be doing. But it's also a learning process, and it's a hard process, but it is worth it. So that is some of my experience with shadow work. I'll be going over a little bit more detail of some of the process of shadow work, why it works, how it works, and how to do it. Some more information on how to do it anyway, a little bit later in this week. So, yeah, I gotta stop that.